I would like to introduce my esteemed colleague, Jeff Gomez, Senior Product Sponsor for Adult Education and Workforce Development here at McGraw-Hill Contemporary. Jeff has over 15 years experience in education, ranging from classroom experience as a 5th grade teacher, program and curriculum development for levels ranging kindergarten to adult, and professional development for K-12 educators, English learner instructors, and adult educators. Jeff, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks. As Meg said, we are very excited to have as many people here today joining us, and thank you for joining us as we can. I have a lot of information I want to cover because, as Meg said, in about 2 months from now or less than that, the world as we know it is changing in the world of adult education, and there's a lot of impact that has on those of you on the phone, be you administrators or instructors, and the learners that you serve. So I wanted to start with a quote, and this is a quote that I think really resonates for us in terms of why is this happening? Why are we shifting? Why are we changing within adult education? This is from Cheryl Keenan, from the Director of Adult Education and Literacy for OZE. The adult education system cannot stand still while the world around us is changing. And I would say even before we were talking about new GEDs or college and career readiness standards for adult education, the people on this phone were well aware that this, in fact, was the case. When we looked at retention rates of students who had achieved GEDs and made their way into post-secondary opportunities, we were seeing, in many cases, are setting students up for failure instead of success. In particular, as the world has changed and as the 21st century economy has introduced new jobs and new skills that are required for participating in that economy, we continually found ourselves falling short in terms of the skills and competencies that we were providing our adult learners. So this rang true then, it rings true now, and the point of today's conversation is for us to see what we can do about it, and do that framed within the changes that are upon us within standard testing in teacher and student behaviors. So we are all aware of the new challenges. With challenge, however, what I like to think of is the fact that these bring about opportunities. Change is hard. Change sometimes is forced, but with that forced change, we hope that we come out on the other end being better as educators and having better outcomes for our students. So one of the first challenges is there's going to be increased rigor and expectations for our students, as well as an instructional shift for teachers. Both of those take time to adopt. However, the opportunity here, based on where we are leading our students, is that these increases in rigor and expectations are leading us to require to better prepare our learners for academic and career pathways, and most importantly, as I just said, that lead our learners to family-sustaining employment and an appreciation for lifelong learning. Be it someone who has gone through the traditional pathways and made their way successfully through the K-12 and college system, or be it an alternative style learner who has taken time off or not even finished high school education. We need to all embrace the fact that in order to continue to be successful, happy, and healthy, we need to be lifelong learners because the jobs around us are changing, the skills needed for those jobs are changing, and therefore embracing that philosophy is something that we really need to model for our students and convey to them. Second challenge is the availability now of multiple high school equivalency exam options for the first time in history creates uncertainty. And we'll get into what that means, and the levels of awareness from the folks on this call may vary, but we have choice now, and choice most people seem to think of as good, but it can be scary because we're not sure where we should be leading our students, and we're not sure if we're making the selection that's actually going to do what it says it's going to do. But what we do know about these new exams is that they do provide choice, but they also provide clear outlines and common goals both for the outcomes of students and the skills and competencies that they should have, as well as for the student and teacher behaviors that are needed in order for students to reach those goals. So regardless of the test, we're here today to talk to you about the fact that there is a solid foundation upon which all of these tests are built and where they're going. That is, so long as you understand that foundation, you'll be successful in the ways that you work with your students and in the outcomes that you provide for your students. Third, there's a greater focus on college and career readiness beyond simply passing the test. And I don't even consider that a challenge. That's an opportunity, and that's a need. For so long, the GED has been an ending point. And with these new tests and with the knowledge and the expertise that has been brought in terms of developing these tests and developing these new standards, I think we can be assured that if we are pushing our students towards this increased rigor and expectations, that these high school equivalency tests that we're leading them to succeed on are not just an ending point, but they're a stepping stone to something better. Either that be post-secondary opportunities, be that career training, and again, family-sustaining careers. So with all this change has been sort of a domino or ripple effect, and with that has come what I like to call the new alphabet soup within adult education. We know there are lots of acronyms that we've had to know forever, and now there's even more. But the shift in standard has sort of precipitated a shift in exams that assess whether students are reaching those standards. And if those are the realities for us and our students, then there has to be a shift in pedagogy that helps sort of elicit the teacher and student behaviors that are going to help students get to those points. So I want to poll the audience now. And again, as Meg said, on the right-hand side, you will see the polling tool. So my first question for polling is, what does CCRS stand for? We're looking at the standards here. There's CCSS and there's CCRS. So the first poll question is, what does CCRS stand for? And I apologize on that. That was my mistake in not actually launching that question. The three options are Common Core Readiness Standards, Common Career Readiness Standards, and College and Career Readiness Standards. And I'm going to give it about 10 seconds more. We're at about 65% haven't voted. We're at 80%. All right, I'm going to close it. So 67% of the folks were correct on this question. The CCRS stands for College and Career Readiness Standards. And the College and Career Readiness Standards are a subset of the CCSS, which are the Common Core State Standards. The CCSS are K-12 standards that came about in June 2010. The CCRS, the College and Career Readiness Standards, came out in April, of 2013, and we'll look at both of those in a moment. My second question talks about the, I gave it away, the exams that you see here. There's the GED, there's the TASC, and there's the HiSET. So my second question is, what does the TASC stand for? What does TASC stand for? We're almost at 70%. This one's a little closer. But based on what I can see, I think our audience is pretty strong here as well. So more than half of you are correct. The TASC stands for the Test Assessing Secondary Completion. It is a test that's produced by CTB, McGraw-Hill, and it is one of 3 major examinations or high school equivalency examinations that are going to be available starting in January 2014. The GED is obviously one that is well known, as it's been the standard bearer for so many years, and we'll talk about that, as well as the HiSET, which is the High School Equivalency Test, and that is a test that's produced by the Educational Testing Service. My third question is regarding the shift in pedagogy, and we see EBRI and DOK, and I bet you all know what DOK means, so I am going to ask, what does EBRI stand for? Is it Enhanced Basic Reading Intervention? Is it Evidence-Based Reading Instruction? Or is it Extending Blended Reading Integration? All right, we're almost at 80%, and it is clear this has been around the longest of any of these acronyms, I believe, other than GED. And so this one has the highest percentage of folks who answered correctly. EBRI stands for Evidence-Based Reading Instruction, and it is a method or pedagogy for instruction that we'll talk about later today, and it is one way of getting at really having learners think about what 21st century economy. So as promised, there's only a couple more polls. I got yelled at for that first set of polls, but I really like polls. So my question to the audience is this. Take a look at this map, look at your state, look at some other states around you, and the question is, what does this map show? Is it states that have adopted the Common Core State Standards? Is it states that have refused to adopt the Common Core State Standards? Is it states that have chosen not to use Common Core State Standards aligned assessment? Or is it all of the above? Well, you know, I gotta pick up my game because it's looking like we've got some smart folks in here. 80+% of you are correct. This is all of the above, and we'll take a look at what these states are. The purple states represent the states that are using the PARC test, which is the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. Green states are the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. And those are the two tests, or major tests, that are coming out starting in 2014 in the fall that are measuring the Common Core State Standards in these states. The blue states have opted out of the test themselves, but they have adopted the Common Core State Standards. They're just choosing to not use PARC or Smarter Balance. And then the non-CCSS states are in gray. Why my thing's not moving? Okay, so what we're really more focused on in adult ed, obviously, is the College and Career Readiness Standards for adult education. So to help understand the differences between the two, they're a lot alike in many ways. One is more geared, obviously, towards our adult learners. So the Common Core State Standards, again, were released in June 2010. part of the National Governors Association initiative. The College and Career Readiness standards were released earlier this year in spring, April 2013, and they represent a subset of the Common Core State Standards. These standards were chosen by a panel of experts across the adult education community. They did not change the standards in any way, except for in cases where the wording or examples that were used for specific standards weren't necessarily adult appropriate in terms of maturity level. But they were not allowed to change these standards. So what they had to do, however, was select the standards that most defined what they believed were necessary for college and career readiness for adult learners, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind. The Common Core State Standards are comprehensive across K-12. They have sets of standards for each grade level. In some cases, it spans of grade levels. When you get into math, it's 9-12 standards, and in certain reading language arts sections, there's spans of standards. But each grade has specific standards. In the CCRS, the College and Career Readiness Standards, there are select Common Core State Standards recommended for A, B, E, and ASC, and they are sort of stratified by levels, levels A, B, C, D, and E, and we'll show what that looks like in a second. Both of these, whether or not whatever you have heard, are adopted or can be adopted by states, but that is a choice. There is no requirement to adopt the Common Core State Standards. There's no requirement to adopt the assessments that are aligned to the Common Core State Standards or the College and Career Readiness State Standards. Their recommendations of what will best suit our learners for college and career readiness, and that is all. As you saw on the map, there are a number of states that haven't adopted the CCSS. There haven't been many states that have adopted the CCRS. This is just more of a set of recommendations. It is not a curriculum either. It is something that should support your curriculum and your curriculum development. The Common Core State Standards are the basis of those assessments that we talked about, HARP and SMART or Balance. And again, both adoption of the standard and use of those assessments is not, again, required, but it is heavily weighted when considering Race to the Top funding and other federal initiatives. On the College and Career Readiness Standards side, the standards align to the assessment. It's hard to say that necessarily any of these assessments is truly based upon the College and Career Readiness Standards because the College and Career Readiness Standards came out in April. So these tests were in motion well before that. So while we can certainly indicate the alignment of these tests to the College and Career Readiness Standards, and we're making sure that all of them are making sure they're doing that, it isn't the basis of the assessment. So what are the key comparisons between CCSS? Well, we'll start with the similarities because this is the spine of both the reading language arts and the mathematics standards. For reading language arts, there are 10 anchor standards. If you're familiar with the GED assessment targets, you know that those are organized by those 10 anchor standards. And there's 8 mathematical practices, and those are sort of overarching standards and practices within reading language arts and within mathematics that form the foundation for both of these sets of standards. Again, whereas Common Core State Standards are grade specific for each of the grades K through 12, the College and Career Readiness Standards for adult education span across grade levels, and these are what those grade levels are. Level A is K through 1, B is 2 through 3, C is grades 4 and 5 with some slight variations or inclusion of grade 6 standards in mathematics. D for reading language arts is 6 through 8, and again, there's a bit of inclusion of grade 6 within mathematics along with 7 and 8, and then E is grades 9 through 12 or high school. And this is what that looks like when we talk about that banding. So here is Anchor Standard 1, which again, the wording of this standard is the same exact wording as it is in the Common Core State Standards. This is the College and Career Readiness Standards for adult learners. And you'll see there's indicators for what this standard means and the skills that students must exhibit at each of those levels, A through E. So again, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, grade 6, 8 at level D, in grades 9 through 12 at level E. So why have these changes come about? And there's 3 key shifts in reading, and there's 3 key shifts in mathematics that have come out of these new standards. Within reading, complexity is one of the biggest reasons for the shift, or the shift, excuse me, between the standards. The #1 indicator identified by research of student success in post-secondary and career is the complexity of the text with which students are working. Up until now, research has indicated that the texts that are presented to our secondary students fall about 4 grade levels below the complexity of the text that they'll be reading in post-secondary opportunities and in careers. It's a huge gap. So if we are not providing students with complex texts, how can we expect them to succeed when they're dealing with complex text later on? That extends to vocabulary and academic language as well. You'll hear me talk about Tier 2 words, which are high-frequency academic vocabulary words that students need to be familiar with, need to be exposed to, and need to be encouraged to use. And that's not just in reading, that's in mathematics. If you teach the student a term such as area, which is a more simplistic term, they should be using that term when they are speaking, when they are talking about area. So it's not just exposure, it's encouraging students to use this more academic language. Shift 2 is evidence, and if you have done any sort of preparation for the writing that students are going to have to do on any of the tests, you'll know that evidence is a huge part of the expectation for students starting in 2014. Whether they are reading, whether they are writing, whether they are speaking, anything that they are doing in terms of communicating both receptively and productively needs to be grounded in evidence. They need to be looking at multiple sources. They need to be understanding what the supporting information is within communication, be it argumentative, be it persuasive, or be it informative, and to understand why those details are used and be able to take that evidence and make assumptions, generalizations, and draw conclusions about the things that they are reading. And shift 3 is knowledge. We're all well aware of this as well. Up until now, the tests that students have taken have focused more heavily on fictional pieces, and now we've moved towards nonfiction. And again, that knowledge through content-rich nonfiction is important, particularly reading informational texts, because those are the texts that students are going to be using both in their academic and post-secondary pursuits and in the career. Key shifts in mathematics. The first shift is the focus. This is something that sort of the ball started rolling about, I want to say 6 years ago, when NCTM came out with the focal points, which were a layer on top of their standards and practices for mathematics. The work has been done for us in terms of saying these are the things that you should focus on. And it's sort of that mile-wide, inch-deep idea. We can't be teaching everything, nor should we be teaching everything. We should be focusing on some key concepts. And the standards, particularly the College and Career Readiness standards for adults, really hone in on those standards that we should be focusing upon with our adult learners. Coherence is designing learning around coherent progression level to level. And the standards do that as well. We shouldn't be teaching something and then dropping off and forgetting we taught it. We should be teaching something and expanding upon it in mathematics. Mathematics builds upon the concepts that students have learned earlier. 3 is rigor. Pursuing conceptual understanding, skill, fluency, and application, all with increasing intensity. In particular, we should be making sure that they don't just understand the concept, but understanding how the concept relates to other concepts within mathematics, having students develop their own ways of thinking, their own ways of solving problems, and with that comes some struggle. Having students actually struggle with a problem before just giving them the answer. So now we're going to talk about the shift in exams, which are our new measures of college and career readiness. So in case you fell asleep because you got a little poll heavy at the start here, here's another poll. And I want you to again look at your state, look at the states around you. And the question that I'm going to ask you is, what does this map show? and I'm going to launch it. Does the map show the status of the state adoption of the College and Career Readiness standards? Does it show the status of state decisions regarding high school equivalency tests? Or does this map show the status of states looking to abolish high school equivalency testing? I'm getting close. About 10 more seconds. There's two that are almost neck and neck right now, but I think our knowledge base is good. It's getting close. 49% of you were correct. The map shows the status of state decisions regarding high school equivalency tests. And we're going to walk through that really quickly because I want to help folks understand what this means and what this doesn't mean. So this is the state of the states as of now when it comes to state decision making regarding high school equivalency tests. A number of states, the ones shown here, have adopted the HiSET test, which is the high school equivalency test. It's the ETS test. And that has been an official state decision. And those students in those states will be using the HiSET for high school equivalency within their test. A few other states have adopted the TAP test, which is the test assessing secondary completion. The map grows a bit here where these three states, Nevada, Montana, and Tennessee, Wyoming and Tennessee, have all indicated that they will be allowing multiple tests within their states for students to take to show high school equivalency. We grow even more when we look at the states that currently have active requests for proposals or requests for information regarding making a statewide decision for which test or tests to select. So these blue states are states for which there is active an RFP process in place at present, in which states are requesting test makers to present their tests, and the state will make a decision about which test or tests will be used in those states. And these are at various stages for each of these states. So when those decisions are actually made, we're not going to get into here, but just to get across the point that there are states that are intending to make decisions. Based on looking at a number of states and talking with a number of states, the next category here are states that we expect there to be an RFP or RFI in the near future. Again, a time frame for that not known, but these are states for which there is definite talk and consideration being made for opening up an RFP or RFI process for high school equivalency tests, for the state to make a decision for that. And then these gray states are states in which there's potentially a statute or code change that will be imminent. What that means is, for so long, since World War II or post-World War II, what we've known as high school equivalency has been GED. GED has been the Kleenex, the Coca-Cola. It's the brand that we all know when we're talking about high school equivalency. So much so, in fact, that the states shown in gray actually have the term GED written into legislation. So you can imagine what that does when folks are saying, well, there's other tests out there. Is this a fair process? If it's legislated that you use the GED from the past, is that fair now? And so these states are evaluating that and making a decision. The point of this map is this. The world, or our country, is changing, and where you are right now, and I don't know where folks are from on this call, but your state may have made a decision, or your state may be in the process of making a decision, either now, next year, or the year after. So that creates a lot of confusion in terms of what should I be preparing my students for, what should I be purchasing, what should I be doing with my students to prepare for a test, especially if that test may be different come next year. Again, our goal here is to talk about the fact that regardless of the test, there are a lot of core competencies and skills that are going to be a part of those tests regardless of which one they go to. Here's the breakdown of the three tests. This is the GED in the left, the TAFE in the middle, and the HiSET. And you'll see the breakdown of content within each of the subject area tests. One thing to note is each one seems to stress different areas differently. So the GED, as we know, has gone to the Common Core State Standards and the College and Career Readiness Standards. Huge focus on informational tests, 75%. HiSET has remained 60%. However, HiSET has also planned on phasing in greater alignment to the Common Core State Standards over time. If you go down the list, you'll see the various emphasis within each of the subject areas and each of the strands within those subject areas. The biggest one, I guess, additionally to look at is that algebraic problem solving. Again, for GED, 55% of the test will be dedicated to that. And TAFE is in a similar area. Algebra and functions, which are two separate strands that they've broken out, will constitute about 52% of that. And then HiSET sort of split across the board among the four major strands of mathematics. In terms of the format, I think we're all well aware that GED will be online only, and it's going to have many new item types introduced in 2014. TAFE and HiSET are both paper and pencil and online formats. TAFE includes multiple choice and gridded response, and they plan to add technology-enhanced items starting in 2015 as they test those items on their populations. HiSET right now, in terms of what we know, is mainly multiple choice. The planned release is where it gets sort of interesting because we all know that starting in 2014, the GED, as it's been described and outlined, is going to be released in January 2nd of next year. Students will begin taking that test. TAFE and HiSET have introduced sort of a phased approach where in 2014 through 16, TAFE will be testing out different item types. They'll be introducing artificial intelligence scoring, do various things. And then in 2015 and beyond, will increase their Ccss alignment with newer item types and the technology and structured response items. Same thing goes for HiSET in terms of moving further and closer towards Common Core alignment and national next generation, science standards. They're going to phase that in as greater adoption of those standards as happens across the state. Their tests will adopt to those choices as well. So there's a bit of fluidity in here in terms of where states are going, and that does obviously create some confusion for you. For more information on these tests, these are the websites, and I believe everyone gets this presentation at the end. But if you are a state where it is an unknown in terms of where your state is going, it probably does behoove you to take a look at these other tests and see what types of things students are needing to prepare for, because that could be something that's in your future. More importantly, to help you see how many of the things across these three tests do align. Last section here is pedagogy, and this is probably the most important. So we have an evolving culture, and with that come new expectations in adult education, both for instructors and students. So one of the things that we talked about was evidence-based reading instruction, and that's what this slide shows. Based on the polls, a lot of you are well aware of what evidence-based reading instruction is, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I do want to look at the four elements: alphabetics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. Alphabetics gets into, at the very lower levels, phonemic awareness, phonics, and word analysis, but when we're talking high school equivalency, what our focus should really be is word analysis strategies, helping students learn how to decipher words based on etymology, root suffixes, and root words. Fluency deals with accuracy and automatic decoding, which we're all well aware of, and things such as prosody, rhythm, and intonation. But again, we're looking at higher level learners when we're talking about high school equivalency candidates. And so one of the big focuses of fluency is how does a student chunk text? How do they chunk that text in a way that reflects their own comprehension of what they're reading? In terms of comprehension, beyond just understanding what they've read, how is the student able to construct personal meaning of the text that they've read and make connections? How are they self-monitoring what they've read? How are they examining the structures of text and using that to understand what they're about to read and better comprehend what it is they have read? And how are they able to take the information they've read and summarize it? And finally, with vocabulary, as I talked about earlier, modeling and applying word analysis skills to abstract meaning, multiple exposures to words. Don't just teach it once and forget it. We need to be reiterating the words that we're teaching students. We need to be saying them and using them fluently, and we need to encourage our students to use them fluently. And again, the words that we should be focusing on, there's Tier 1 words, which are basic vocabulary. Tier 3 words are more academic vocabulary in terms of subject-specific vocabulary. But in terms of the types of words that they need to be successful in college and careers, it's those Tier 2 words, those academic vocabulary words that are high frequency within workplace and within academic settings that students need to be versed in. The other pedagogical shift that we talked about was Webb's depth of knowledge. And as we all know, the depth of knowledge is something that is very different from what we've sort of come to know, and I don't know if it's come to love, that's dependent on you, but we've all come to know Bloom's taxonomy that's been around for a very long time. The difference between these two comes down to really one question for each. Bloom's really focuses on the type of thinking that is required to solve a problem. These are all action words that are having students or indicate what the students are doing in order to generate their answer, be it applying, analyzing, evaluating at the high end, or remembering and understanding at the lower end of taxonomy. When it gets to Webb, we're looking not just at their actions, but we're looking at the complexity of the thinking that they're doing, both in terms of the processes that they're using, but also their depth of understanding of the material that they're working with. And so the key question with Webb really is, what depth of understanding is required for the learner to answer this question or solve this problem? And here's a great example of how the two sort of relate. This is called Hess's Cognitive Rigor Matrix. This is from Karen Hess. And it looks at, in a matrix format, how the skill of remembering really only applies, in Bloom's to level 1, but how these depth of levels within Bloom's, align to the depth of cognitive understanding required for Web DOK. So we'll come back to this in a second as we look at some items where I'm going to poll the audience. One of the big questions that you're going to hear when talking about Bloom is difficulty versus complexity. I've seen a number of sessions already that get at this. Just because something is difficult may be so because it's simply time-consuming or requires a lot of background knowledge on a topic. Someone coming off the street answering a question about something for which they have no background knowledge, it would be very difficult for them. That does not mean it's complexity, or complex. Complexity comes when the student is actually required to have a depth of understanding of the concept. And with that understanding, they're asked to make judgments, decisions, generalizations to demonstrate their understanding and their ability to apply that understanding. So we're going to look at some tasks here, and we're going to identify whether they're difficult or complex, and more importantly, what Bloom's level they are. So my audience poll is this. What is the DOK of the following problem? Name the 50 states in alphabetical order. And I'm going to launch it now. Is it level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4 of Bloom's? Name the 50 states in alphabetical order. I learned a song in 4th grade course that did this. The only reason I know it. In the essence of time, I'm going to close this. You are pretty much right on. 65% of you are right. This is a level 1 DOK. And I'm going to show a chart from, again, Karen Hess. This is simply asking students to recall information. It's difficult. That's a lot of states, 50 of them. And again, the only reason I know it is I had to sing the song by Ray Charles, I think, that has the 50 states in alphabetical order, 50 nifty United States. But I memorized it. So I can do it, and when I do it, all I'm doing is pulling from recall memory. Maybe it's describing or explaining who, what, where, more, what than anything else, because I wasn't doing anything in regards to a map. But this is simply level 1 recall. So now let's look at something different. Name the 50 states and their capitals in the order they were admitted to the Union. Is this a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 DOK? Again, due to time, I'm going to close it once we're at 70%, and we are. All right. Unfortunately, this is the first question in today's presentation for which the overall audience was incorrect. The audience guessed level 2, but again, we are looking at a level 1 item. This is simple recall. Not simple, it's difficult recall, and I don't know a song that names the 50 states and their capitals in the order that they were admitted to the Union, because it would be a very long song. But this is still simple recall. This is memorization. They're not doing anything. They're not being asked to do anything with information other than remember it in a specific order. Oh, I left it open, so people were able to change their answers maybe. Sorry. So 53% of you thought level 2. Last question. What is the DOK of the following question? Using the map on the right, explain 2 factors that have impacted where state capitals are located. Guys are right on here. All right, with 75%, you folks are exactly right. It is a split between level 2 and 3. We're asking students to do a number of things here. Patterns of behavior in terms of where things are located and why, organization of information to show relationships between location and geography, and some complex reasonings here where they're generalizing and drawing conclusions based on prior knowledge and based on what they're looking at. This also blends not just geography, but all of the strands of social studies. Geography and economics-wise, it's looking at why location is important when choosing a location for a city, and that proximity to resources such as bodies of water, rivers, or coastal areas provides easier transportations of goods in and out of cities. History and civics-wise, we look at the importance of the centrality of capitals, and that's historically important because at the time of many of these states forming, travel to and from areas of the state was a little more difficult than it is today, and thus it optimized the ability for civic participation among citizens if it was more centrally located. Those are all things that you could build into an activity just based on that one problem there, as opposed to the first two, simply memorization. You could also further this discussion. You could look at things in terms of present day. Do those same factors, centrality, coastal, or being near a body of water, or even being near a resource, exist today? If the state was formed today, would those be factors that impact location and why? You can locate yourself anywhere. I work from home sometimes. I don't actually need to go to an office. These are discussions that can be had with your students that get them actually more more reasoning, both basic and complex. And that level 2 and 3, the depth of knowledge levels, is really the sweet spot for where we need to be moving our students in terms of what they're doing in the classroom. GED and CAP and HiSET have all indicated the percentage of questions that they intend to have at levels 2 and 3. And either with GED, they've set the percentages for levels 1, 2, and 3. CAP, in their case, and HiSET, I believe, they've phased in, saying that, you know, in the earlier phases, it will be a little higher percentage of level 1 questions, but moving forward, the level 2 and 3 questions are going to form the majority of the items on this test. So we need to be getting our students there, but how? So these are the 3 things that I think are most important for getting us. Provide opportunities for discussion and explanation. This is all-way communication, not two-way communication. Too many of the things that we provide is a student providing an answer in a worksheet, and the only person it goes to is you, the teacher. It's a two-way communication. They're not going to get at these higher levels of thinking if they're even writing a paper or writing a response, extended response, sample response, just for you. If they're writing just for you, they're going to write in a certain way, as opposed to if they're writing in more authentic ways, such as the way we write today, where it's much more broadcast. Peer reviews are things that you can do. Discussion-based questions are things that you can do to help it be sort of multiple formats of communication, multiple ways of showing your thinking and showing that you are getting at these higher orders of thinking. Providing authentic materials and experiences that are complex, engaging, and relevant to students. This is something we know. There's so much out there now for our students to be engaging with, particularly in terms of reading materials. You can take a blog and have students analyze what is the evidence supported by this blog in any sort of position that we want to look at. Is it strong evidence? Is it rooted in fact? Why is the person making this point? And then looking at someone else's opinion on the same topic and saying, what points do they make and why do they make those points? And really getting students to be looking at materials that are authentic, that are real, that are the materials that they're seeing not just in the classroom but outside the classroom. And finally, encouraging divergent thinking in students through strategic questioning and modeling. You're not going to get students to necessarily say all the things that I just said about that math. They're not going to say, well, they're located near rivers or near coasts, and that is why, because the transportation of goods was so much more possible by being located there. That type of thinking and that type of analysis only comes when we, the instructors, are actually leading students towards that type of thinking, asking for different perspectives, asking one student to explain another student's perspective. There are certain cases where there is a right answer, but there's lots of cases where we can provide opportunities where there are many right answers, and there's many ways of getting to the right answers, and those are the types of activities that we should be providing our students so that they're really becoming astute thinkers and embracing learning because they own it and because they know they can do it. And now I'm going to switch it over to Meg so that we can talk quickly about some of the materials that we, McGraw-Hill Education, are coming out now and in the near future regarding high school equivalency.
Thanks, Jeff. So as Jeff had said, I want to take just a couple of short minutes to talk about some of the resources that are available from McGraw-Hill to really help you meet the challenges and opportunities that we've discussed on the webinar today. As many of you know, McGraw-Hill Contemporary, we've been a trusted partner in adult ed for over 4 years, and we're really looking forward to partnering with you once again to help your students not only achieve test success for these new 2014 exams, but to help them build lasting foundations for college and career readiness. So our new program is called the McGraw-Hill Education Common Core High School Equivalency Series. It's not just aligned, it's actually built from the ground up upon the Common Core, the College and Career Readiness Standards, and the assessment targets for all 3 of the new exams, the 2014 GED, the TAC, and the HiSET. And this exciting new series actually includes a suite of 3 brand new programs to reach every level, or the most pertinent levels of your adult learners today. Common Core Basic, Common Core Achieve, and Power Up Getting Started with Computers and Keyboarding. These programs are going to help prepare adult learners and educators for the shift to the new standards, help adapt to the new standards by focusing instruction around evidence-based reading instruction and web steps of knowledge, and help students achieve not just test success, but as we said before, really build a strong foundation for college and career readiness. So let's start with Common Core Basics. Common Core Basics is for adult learners with a 6 through 8 grade level equivalent, and it really focuses on the foundational skills that are needed to begin preparing for any of those 3 new Common Core-based high school equivalency exams. The second program in our series is called Common Core Achieve, and this is for adult learners with a 9 through 12 grade level equivalent. Common Core Achieve focuses on the core content instruction that's needed to actively prepare for any of these 3 Common Core-based high school equivalency exams. But the really, really cool thing about Common Core Achieve is not only is it a standards-based program, but it also includes that critical exercise, practice, and test prep that's specific to each of those 3 exams. So you're going to get standards-based core instruction, and then you're going to get test-specific practice. Common Core Achieve provides solutions in both all print and all digital, but the really cool thing is it also allows you the option to create a blended learning solution that meets your specific needs. The core content instruction in both print and digital for Common Core Achieve is the same, but all of your practice questions and your post-assessment questions are going to be different in your print and digital programs. So you can really utilize them simultaneously for whichever one you want to use as core instruction in the classroom and maybe independent practice for students on their own. The series also prepares not just students, but of course the instructors as well, with a robust offering of both program-specific support for every single lesson within both Common Core Basics and Common Core Achieve. We also offer best practices professional development that's hopefully going to make your transition to the Common Core and College and Career Readiness standards seamless. We also haven't forgotten the fact that many students, particularly those students that will be taking the 2014 GED this year, are going to be required to take their equivalency exam on a computer. So for students that really kind of need a crash course in the basics, we offer Power Up, Getting Started with Computers and Keyboarding. It really prepares students with the computer basic skills that are needed for computer-based test taking, but also college classes and the 21st century workplace. These exciting new programs prepare various levels of students and instructors for the shift to Common Core, and they also provide the critical computer skills that are needed to be successful on the new 2014 exams. However, the Common Core High School Equivalency Series is so much more than just a test prep program. We really invite you to take a closer look and find out about how we'll help your students achieve on test day, but also beyond. So again, we invite you to visit us at our website at commoncoreachieve.com to learn more about each of the 3 programs we just briefly touched on today. You can download samples, and more importantly, you can find your local sales rep to schedule a free strategy session to help you get going immediately and see what we have to offer for your particular needs. So now I think we just want to take the last couple of minutes to open up the floor for more questions, if anyone has any. And I'm also moderating questions, so now I'm back in a different chair. So a couple of questions that had come in earlier. There were several people that asked, when you were talking about the different tier levels of vocabulary words, where do we get the list of Tier 2 words? Where can we find that information?
Tier 2 words, one of the great sources for vocabulary and tiers of vocabulary is Elizabeth Beck, and I believe the book is called Bringing Words to Life. I think that's the name of the text. If you typed in Tier 2 academic vocabulary and did a Google search or web search, I think it would be very easy to quickly decipher those Tier 2 lists and where they exist. I would obviously say that we also here at McGraw-Hill Education have a vocabulary program within our portfolio of products that does focus explicitly on Tier 2 vocabulary. However, you can certainly get just the lists of theirs that are out there out on the web.
All right. Thank you. Another really interesting question came up. So this particular person had asked or had stated that there is a lot of research and information on student needs about what's changing in adult ed, especially for assisting low-skilled and low-literate adults. But he wants to know, has there been any research on the quality, effectiveness, and ability of adult ed teachers to teach these new concepts and standards, particularly for folks that are specifically going towards a career as opposed to college readiness?
So in terms of the instructors themselves being effective?
Yeah.
There hasn't been, but there's been a lot of talk. COABE is one area, one organization I know that are really looking at the importance and the need for more credentialing within the adult education community in terms of instructor credentialing and certification. So from what we've seen out there, there's been a definite increase in the professional development opportunities that are available to adult educators. There's an obvious need for that with all of the shifts and changes that have happened in adult education. I don't think any studies have necessarily been done as a part of that, but I think that as these programs are released, and these professional development programs in particular are released, I would assume that the organizations that are running those professional development opportunities will be sort of polling the before and after and doing some sort of quantitative study to get a sense of the effectiveness of instructors both before and after. And I think one of the big indicators for that will be the first sets of test results that come out on seeing where students are landing and then seeing what changes are made within the instructional shifts that happen as a result of those scores and seeing if they improve.
Okay, thank you. So we're unfortunately at the end of our time today. We have received a slew of questions about the program-specific materials towards the end of the presentation. We won't have time to answer them on the webinar, but again, I just want to reassure you guys that we'll put together an FAQ of all the questions about the program and about just all of the information that Jeff shared with us today. Put together an FAQ. We'll make sure that that goes out to everybody so all of your program-specific questions will get answered. And I want to remind you that if you want more information on the Common Core High School Equivalency Series, any of those three programs, Common Core Basics, Common Core Achieve, or Power Up, you can find your local sales rep at commoncoreachieve.com. Just click on Find Your Sales Rep, and you'll be able to find their phone number and email address, and they'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. And I also wanted to let everybody know that you will receive a follow-up email from us, so look for that in your inbox within the next 24 hours, and it will include a transcript of today's presentation, the PowerPoint slides, so you'll have all of the wonderful information that Jeff shared with us. So we're now 2 minutes over, and I just want to thank everybody again for taking time out of your busy days to join us for our webinar today on meeting the new opportunities of the College and Career Readiness Standards. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge, and we really hope that everybody gains just invaluable knowledge that you can take into your classrooms immediately, and we really look forward to partnering with you to ensure 2014 success for you and your students. Thank you so much, and have a great day.